All right, so uh, lots of people listening are probably thinking about this, how to really nail a job interview in English.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've got a great guide here that we're going to call it Mastering English for Job Interviews.
Okay.
And think of this deep dive as your secret weapon to pull out the best tips to really impress no matter your English level right now.
Right.
And
It's really interesting how this guy, like right out of the gate, they're talking about first impressions,
Right.
especially when you're trying to get that job, the one that you really want.
Yeah.
So, you can have the skills and everything on paper,
yeah,
but if you can't communicate that in English clearly and with confidence, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice,
yeah. And I'm thinking about somebody like Sarah that we've talked about before.
Right.
She's been working so hard to break into the marketing world. Her English is really good, but interviews make her nervous. So what would you say to Sarah about how important her English skills will be in such a competitive field?
Well, I tell her what this guide emphasizes. Strong English skills can be a real separator.
Right.
Think about it from the hiring manager's perspective.
Yeah.
They're going through tons of resumes. They're doing interview after interview.
Right.
And somebody who can communicate clearly, concisely, and with confidence is going to stand out, especially in a global market.
Yeah, it's not just about sounding like a textbook, right?
Right.
It's got to be about connecting with the person interviewing you
Yeah.
and letting your personality come through.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a total package.
Yeah.
Vocabulary is important, but so is tone. How you sound.
Yeah.
Fluency, and even understanding those little cultural differences.
Right.
That can really change how people see you.
So how do we help Sarah and everybody else who's listening
Yeah.
tackle those common interview questions that, kind of
Yeah.
make us all nervous?
Yeah.
Like, tell me about yourself. Why this job?
Right.
And of course, what's your greatest weakness? I still get butterflies just thinking about that one.
Well, this guide really nails it with the STAR method.
Okay.
Situation, task, action, result.
Okay.
Think of it as like a story framework for your answers. Instead of rambling on and giving generic answers,
Right.
you're setting the scene, you're explaining the problem, you're saying what you did,
Right.
and then you're highlighting the positive result.
Okay, let's break that down for Sarah and our listeners.
Okay.
Like, imagine Sarah gets asked about a time she faced a challenge at work.
Yeah.
How would she use that STAR method to really give a great answer?
Okay, so first she sets this situation. So she could say something like, in my last job, our team had to launch a new product, but on a really tight deadline.
Oh, wow.
So right away, we've got context, and it's interesting.
Yeah, and how does she bring in the task then?
Well, that's where she talks about her specific role in the situation.
Okay.
She could say, my job was to manage the whole social media campaign, which meant working with lots of different teams and making sure we stayed on brand and hit our deadlines.
Okay, so now we understand what she was up against.
Exactly.
Okay, so now it's action time.
Yeah.
This is where she gets to shine.
Right. This is where she shows off her problem-solving skills and how she takes initiative. So she might say something like, I set up this new project management system and had daily check-ins to keep everyone on the same page.
Yeah.
I also brainstormed new ideas when we hit some unexpected roadblocks.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, and then the big finish result. What does success look like in this story?
Right. Well, this is where Sarah can put some numbers to her success. So she might say something like, as a result, we launched the product right on time and actually beat our engagement targets by 20%. The client was super happy, and our whole team got recognized by the company for doing a great job.
Wow. You can practically hear the interviewer writing that down.
Yeah,
That's so much better than just saying, I'm good at working under pressure.
exactly. It paints a picture.
Right.
You're not just telling them, you're showing them. And that's what makes the STAR method so powerful.
Okay, now let's talk about something that I know can be a little scary for non-native English speakers. Pronunciation and fluency.
Yeah.
This guide gives some good advice, especially about using the listen and repeat technique.
Yeah.
I bet Sarah's already doing that.
Yeah.
But what else can she do to really master those subtle sounds and rhythms in English?
I think the most important thing is to find real English materials to practice with.
Okay.
Listening to real English interviews like podcasts, like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Or TED Talks, that can be a huge help. Even watching movies or TV shows in English, paying attention to how native speakers say words and put sentences together can make a difference.
Right.
It's all about immersing yourself in the language.
This guide also mentions a couple of apps, ELSA Speak and Pronounce,
Right.
which are supposed to help with pronunciation. Have you ever used those?
I have, and I think they can be really useful, especially for working on specific sounds that you find tricky. But I always tell people that technology should just be an extra tool, not a replacement for real practice.
That's a great point. It's like anything else, practice makes perfect, but you got to practice the right way.
Exactly. And speaking of practice, I think it's important to remind Sarah and all our listeners that fluency isn't about being perfect.
Right.
It's about being able to communicate your ideas well.
Yeah.
Don't get hung up on little mistakes or let a stumble throw you off.
Yeah. It's about getting the message across, not being a robot.
Exactly. Focus on getting your message across clearly and confidently.
Right.
That's what really matters in an interview.
Yeah. Okay. So
Well,
we've talked about how important preparation is, mastering those common questions.
Right.
And polishing your pronunciation and fluency.
Right.
But what about actually doing it? How does this guide recommend we practice and get better at our interview skills?
Well, this guide really stresses how important practice is. Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
And they give some really good practical advice for doing that. They suggest recording yourself answering typical interview questions and then listening back to see where you can improve.
Yeah.
You can also do mock interviews with a friend, a mentor, or even a career counselor to get a feel for the real thing.
You know what? Even as someone who interviews people all the time, I still find mock interviews so helpful.
Yeah.
It's like a dress rehearsal for the main event.
Exactly. And I love how this guide encourages people to think of each practice session as a step towards really mastering it.
Right.
It's a journey, not a destination, right?
Totally. Every time you practice, you're building confidence,
Yeah.
you're polishing your answers, and you're getting closer to nailing that interview.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Now, this guide goes beyond the basics
Yeah.
and gives some really good extra tips that I think are worth mentioning.
Okay.
They talk about how important it is to ask good questions at the end of the interview.
Right.
I've always thought that was such a key part of the whole thing. It shows that you're paying attention, you've been listening, and you're truly interested in the job and the company.
Right.
What kind of questions do you think Sarah should get ready to ask?
Well, I'd tell Sarah to think about questions that show she knows about the company and that she's really curious about the job.
Yeah.
For example, she could ask about the company's plans for the future,
Yeah.
specific projects she might get to work on, or opportunities for professional development.
Those are really good examples.
Yeah.
Asking smart questions can really make you stand out from other candidates and leave a good impression.
For sure. And another bonus tip that I liked was about staying calm even when you're feeling pressure.
Right.
Interviews can be nerve-wracking, especially in a second language.
Oh, tell me about it. I still get those pre-interview jitters, and English is my first language.
Yeah, but you're right. This guide stresses how important it is to just take a deep breath, pause before answering if you need a second to collect your thoughts. And remember that the interviewers are looking for someone who can handle challenges well.
Right, and it's not just about staying calm. It's also about letting your personality come through.
Yeah.
This guide reminds us that interviewers want to see who you are as a person, not just a list of skills and experience.
Exactly.
It's about finding that balance between being professional and being yourself.
Right.
Okay, so I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
From the importance of first impressions and mastering those common questions to polishing your pronunciation and projecting confidence like a pro.
Yeah.
What are some of the main takeaways you'd like to leave our listeners with? Especially someone like Sarah who's getting ready for a big interview.
Well,
What do you think of they?
I think one of the big takeaways from this guide is that anyone, even someone like Sarah who's a little nervous about interviewing in English, can absolutely ace that interview with the right attitude and some dedicated effort.
I completely agree. This guide isn't just about learning some tips and tricks. It's about giving yourself the tools and the confidence to communicate what you're worth in any situation.
Exactly.
It's about taking action and putting in the work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It reminds me of something I read recently about the power of deliberate practice. It's not just about going through the motions.
Right.
It's about really figuring out what you want to get better at and focusing your energy on those specific skills. So for Sarah, that might mean spending extra time practicing how to say certain sounds.
Yeah.
Or working on how to smoothly connect her ideas when she's answering questions.
And what's interesting is this guide kind of recognizes that learning a language is a never-ending process. It's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
And that's true even for native English speakers. We're all always learning new words, getting better at how we communicate, and adapting to different situations.
So true, and this guide really does give us an amazing roadmap.
Yeah.
Not just for doing great in that interview,
Right.
but for continuing to grow and develop our English communication skills in every part of our lives.
And this brings up an interesting question for all our listeners, especially for someone like Sarah, who's about to take her career to the next level.
Yeah.
How do you see these new English skills helping you beyond just the interview?
Right.
Could they help you build stronger relationships with colleagues,
Yeah.
navigate international business deals with confidence, or even open doors to exciting travel or education opportunities?
That's such a great point.
Yeah.
It's about expanding your horizons and embracing all the amazing things that come with mastering a global language.
It's about recognizing that language is more than just words. It's a tool for connecting, working together, and making positive changes in the world.
Absolutely. So for everyone out there who's working on their English communication skills, remember, every conversation is a chance to practice.
Yeah.
Every interaction is an opportunity to learn and grow.
Embrace those challenges, celebrate your progress, and never stop exploring the incredible power of language.
You got this.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive. You know, speaking of confidence, this guide really digs into how much, preparing really helps you feel ready to rock that interview.
Yeah.
It's not just about practicing your answers. It's about, researching the company, the role of the industry.
Right.
It's almost like you become a mini expert.
Yeah.
I bet that would help somebody like Sarah feel a lot more comfortable walking into the interview.
Oh, absolutely. This guide makes a really good point about how being prepared can actually make you more confident.
Yeah.
When you've done your homework, you can talk to the interviewers on a deeper level.
Right.
You can ask them good questions and really show you're excited about the job.
Right.
It's like you're already part of the team.
Right. And that confidence, it's not just about what you say, it's about how you present yourself, too.
Exactly. This guide talks about some important nonverbal cues, like having good posture, making eye contact, smiling.
Right.
They might seem like small things, but they can really make you seem professional and approachable.
Okay, so let's go back to Sarah for a second. Imagine she's got her STAR method answers ready. She's researched the company, but she's still a bit nervous about her English sounding really polished and professional.
Right.
What are some, pro tips from this guide to help her really nail that first impression?
Well, one tip I found really useful is having a few power phrases ready to use.
Okay.
And these are those phrases that you can use in your answers to make your language sound better and make you sound more confident.
Right.
Like saying things like, I'm eager to contribute my skills to, or in my last role, I successfully implemented.
Yeah.
Little things like that can make a big difference.
It's almost like having a cheat sheet to sound confident and professional, even if you're feeling nervous inside.
Yeah.
I love it. It reminds me of the time I was on an interview panel,
Okay.
and one candidate was so qualified on paper, but they just seemed so nervous and unsure of themselves.
Yeah.
Their English wasn't bad, but their lack of confidence really affected how we saw them, which was a shame.
That's a perfect example. It really shows how interviews are about more than just what's on your resume. It's about connecting with the interviewers, showing your enthusiasm, and demonstrating your soft skills,
Yeah.
like communication, problem solving, and being able to adapt.
Okay, so we've talked about preparing, mastering those common questions,
Right.
polishing your pronunciation and fluency.
Yeah.
But what about the actual practice part? How does this guide recommend we actually practice and improve our interview skills?
Well, this guide really emphasizes the importance of practice, practice, practice.
Right.
And they offer some really practical ways to do that.
Okay.
They suggest recording yourself, answering typical interview questions, and then listening back to find areas where you can improve.
Okay.
You can also do mock interviews with a friend, a mentor, or even a career counselor
Right.
to simulate the real experience.
You know what? Even as someone who interviews people regularly, I still find mock interviews super helpful.
Yeah.
It's like a dress rehearsal for the real deal.
Exactly. And I love how this guide encourages the listener to see each practice session as a step towards mastery.
Right.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Totally. Every time you practice, you're building confidence, you're fine-tuning your answers, and you're getting closer to nailing that interview.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Now, this guide goes beyond just the basics and offers some really insightful bonus tips that I think are worth highlighting.
Okay.
They talk about the importance of asking insightful questions at the end of the interview.
Right.
I've always thought this is such a crucial part of the interview process.
Yeah.
It shows that you're engaged, you've been listening, and you're genuinely interested in the role in the company.
Right.
What kind of questions do you think Sarah should prepare in advance?
Well, I'd advise Sarah to think about questions that show she's knowledgeable about the company and genuinely curious about the role.
Okay.
For example, she could ask about the company's future goals, specific projects she might be involved in, or opportunities for professional development.
Those are great examples. Asking thoughtful questions can really set you apart from other candidates and leave a lasting positive impression.
Absolutely. And another bonus tip that resonated with me is the importance of staying calm under pressure.
Right.
Interviews can be nerve-wracking, especially in a second language.
Oh, tell me about it. I still get those pre-interview jitters, and English is my first language.
Oh, yeah. But you're right. This guide emphasizes the importance of taking a deep breath, pausing before answering if you need a moment to collect your thoughts.
Right.
And remembering that the interviewers are looking for someone who can handle challenges gracefully.
And it's not just about staying calm, it's also about letting your personality shine through.
Yeah.
This guide reminds us that interviewers want to see who you are as a person, not just a list of skills and experiences.
Exactly.
It's about finding that balance between professionalism and authenticity.
Right.
Okay, so I think we've covered a ton of ground here, from the power of first impressions and mastering those common questions, to polishing pronunciation and projecting confidence like a pro. What are some of the key takeaways you'd like to leave our listeners with, especially someone like Sarah, who's actively prepping for a big interview?
I think one of the biggest things we can take away from this guide is that anyone like Sarah who might be a little nervous about doing an interview in English can totally nail it if they have the right mindset and put in the work.
I totally agree. This guide isn't just about learning a bunch of tips and tricks.
Right.
It's about giving yourself the tools and the confidence to really show your worth in any situation.
Excellent.
It's about taking action and putting in the effort.
Yeah.
It reminds me of something I read a while back about deliberate practice.
Right.
You know, it's not just about going through the motions. It's about figuring out where you need to improve and focusing your energy on those specific skills.
Right.
So for Sarah, that might mean like spending more time practicing how to say certain sounds or working on how to smoothly connect her ideas when she's answering questions.
And what's really interesting is that this guide sort of acknowledges that learning a language is a continuous thing.
Yeah.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
And that's true even for native English speakers.
Right.
We're all constantly picking up new words, refining our communication styles, and adapting to different situations.
That's so true. And this guide really does give us an amazing roadmap.
Yeah.
Not just for acing that interview, but for continuing to grow and develop our English communication skills in all parts of our lives.
Absolutely. And this brings up a really interesting question for our listeners, especially for someone like Sarah, who's about to take her career to the next level.
Yeah.
How do you see these new English skills helping you, not just in the interview, but beyond?
Right.
Could they help you build stronger relationships with colleagues, navigate international business deals more confidently, or even open doors to exciting travel or education opportunities?
That's a great point. It's about broadening your horizons and embracing all the amazing things that come with mastering a global language.
It's about recognizing that language is more than just words.
Yeah.
It's a tool for connecting, collaborating, and making positive changes in the world.
I love that. So to everyone out there who's working on their English communication skills, remember, every conversation is a chance to practice.
Yeah.
Every interaction is an opportunity to learn and grow.
Embrace those challenges, celebrate your progress, and never stop exploring the incredible power of language.
You got this. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive.